Okay, so this is a video to go through some of the more common uses for your calculator. Big thing is knowing how to use it to find things like mean and standard deviation, even like median, Q1, Q3, 5-number summary of a list of data. So what I'm going to do first is go into stat and then edit, and then I have some data in there already. I'm just going to randomly add to it some silly numbers that I'm making up. So if I wanted to know what the mean of that data set is, and I didn't want to add them all up and divide by however many, I would go to stat and then calc and then Vars stats. It brings up a little thing, I tell it L1. I can change that if the list I'm curious about is an L2. I can always do second 2 and then change that, but this time I happen to want L1. And then calculate, and it gives me the mean. The standard deviation is S, we always use the S. And then if I scroll down a little ways, I get my 5-number summary. Quick little differences, if I'm using the older calculators, if I go to stat, calc, Vars stats, it doesn't bring up that lovely menu. So if I push enter right now, it will automatically use L1, but if I wanted it to use L2, I would have to say second 2 and then enter. But if I do want L1, I could either leave that off or just push second 1 after it before I push enter, and it gives me all that same stuff. So that's the first thing. Another thing that we commonly might use our calculator for is to get a histogram or a box plot of a set of data. So again, I have my data in L1. If I wanted to do a histogram or a box plot, I would go to second y equals. I'm going to push enter on plot 1. I'm going to push enter to turn it on. I can go down here and choose the type of graph that I want, just left and right. So if I wanted a histogram, I would choose that one. If I wanted a box plot with outliers, I would choose that one, etc. Then again, XList is wherever your list of data is, so I can change that if I need to. And then once I have that, I'm going to get quit out of there. Once I have that, I could go to graph right now, but it's not necessarily going to show me anything because the window is kind of off. So the easiest way to get the correct window, zoom 9, which is zoom stat, gives me exact perfect window for my box plot. And it works the same on the older calculators. The next thing, we were in the second Vars menu a lot. So second Vars brings up normalpdf, normalcdf, inverse norm. So normalpdf we never used. Normalcdf would be how we could find a probability with a z-score, like if we have like a z-table basically. And then inverse norm, if I know the probabilities, I could find the z-scores. Another thing I used this for was the binomial stuff, so binompdf, binomcdf, and those are in there. Those are the main things we used in this menu. So you have that. On the older calculators, the only change, those same things are still in there, but for example on normalcdf, I have to actually know what goes in it, whereas if I choose normalcdf on this calculator, it brings up a lovely little menu. So I just have to know the order of things. If I want a normal model, what we typically do is put in -1, the uppercase E 99 as my lower limit. It's like a super negative number, and then whatever my z-score is as my upper limit, and then that'll give me the probability below 2.33 z-score. And then if I wanted greater than, I would do 1 minus that. So that's kind of the little trick, whereas this one I would just have to put the z-score and then paste, and it does all that for me. So it's just a little bit tricky. You have to know the order of things. Same thing with binomial on this calculator. You have to know the order of things. Let's say I had a binomial. I knew the probability of flipping a coin and getting heads is 0.5. I want to know what's the probability of getting exactly 4 heads if I roll it or flip it 10 times. So 10 is my trials, that goes first. So it's n, comma, p is the probability of getting it, so 0.5, and then comma, and then x is how many times you want it to happen. So I want it to happen exactly 4 out of 10 times. So that is the order for binompdf. All right, the last little place I want to look is in your stat test menu. We have all the different hypothesis tests that we have ever learned how to do. They're all there. A really good way to determine if you know you're dealing with a hypothesis test or confidence interval, but you're not entirely sure which type, a good way to kind of look through your options is to go to your stat test menu and just look at what's there. Maybe go into one and see, do I have the information I need to fill in this little menu? It's a good way to do it. And a couple of things to note: new calculator versus old calculator. On the new one, you have this chi-squared GOF test, so for goodness of fit test. On the older ones, you do not have that. So you have the regular chi-squared test, which is for test of independence or homogeneity, but you do not have the goodness of fit test. So just a little bit of caution there. If you do have an older one and you're doing a goodness of fit test, you have to work a little bit harder to get your values. You can't really use the calculator. What you have to do, so once I have my observed here and my expected values here, what I can do is go up to L3, and I'm going to put the chi-squared formula in here. So I'm going to do parentheses. My observed is in L1 minus my expected is in L2 squared divided by expected, which is in L2. And then my last step is I need to add all of those together, which I can do by hand, but I can also go back to my home screen, second stat math, and then there's a sum option, sum up L3. So that is my chi-squared value, and then I would actually have to use the chi-squared table to find or to estimate our p-value. So it's a little bit more work for a goodness of fit test with the older calculator, but that is kind of the gist. So that is it. That's the things I wanted to go through with you. There's obviously a lot more things you can do with your calculator, some little shortcuts and tricks, but those were the main things that we learned or did with our calculator. So if you have any questions, make sure and let me know. Send me an email, and I will try to do a little bit more videos if you have more specific questions. All right, bye.